Ama no Ewato, which literally means heavenly rock cave, is a prominent location in Japanese folklore. Apart from being the setting for the infamous quarrel between Susanoo and literally every other kami ever, it is also believed to have been the mythological point of origin for Japan's rich theatrical tradition. In the myth, the kami of the sun, Amaterasu, hides in the cave after being annoyed by her brother Susanoo. Understandably so. As the legend goes, Susanoo beat her in a childbearing contest, pooped all over her house, and skinned alive and threw a young horse into her weaving hall, causing one of Amaterasu's servants to accidentally kill herself. All things considered, I'd say locking herself up in a cave was a fairly mild reaction. Now, if a sun god locks herself up in a cave, the world would naturally be deprived of light. That is exactly what happened. Plunged into darkness for an unspecified length of time, all the other kami began getting restless. They tried luring Amaterasu out of the cave by first forcing some roosters to crow in the hopes that the sun would be tricked into rising, and then by performing an elaborate ritual involving a stone anvil, heavenly metal, some beads, and deer shoulders? But alas, none of this seemed to work, and Amaterasu remained stubbornly hidden in Ama no Ewato. Finally, Ame no Uzume no Mikoto, also known as Uzume, the kami of parties, broadly speaking, had an idea. She decided that the best way to extract Amaterasu from the cave was to, throw a party. She began to dance on a barrel, her makeshift stage, in front of the other kami, gradually taking off all her clothes, making as much noise and creating as loud a commotion as possible. Her curiosity piqued, Amaterasu emerged from the cave, wondering who could be having so much fun in the absence of light. Sun gods, I tell you. They think the world revolves around them. Quickly, the cave was sealed so that Amaterasu could not go back in, and the earth was bathed in her radiance once again. And that, my friends, is Japanese theatre's creation myth. Uzume dancing on the barrel, that is, not Amaterasu emerging from the cave. Just clearing that up. Anyway, moving on. Traditional Japanese theatre is usually considered to consist of four major forms: No, Kyogen, Kabuki, and Bunraku. But they are not as watertight as people generally believe theatrical traditions to be. No was often performed in combination with Kyogen, a form known as Nogaku, and Kabuki and Bunraku have always coexisted, what with their similar tropes of storytelling. Apart from these, there also exist several other, newer, as well as less known forms such as Shingeki, Shimpa, Bhuto, and Angura. No and Kyogen are believed to be the two oldest forms of Japanese theatre. A traditional Nogaku performance comprised of several No plays with comedic Kyogen skits in transition. Nogaku was, and still remains, highly traditional with little room for technical innovation. Kabuki, on the other hand, features heavily stylized performances, which historically included spectacular effects such as on-stage costume changes, character transformations, revolving sets, and flying actors, where performers often played different genders and roles. Additionally, while Nogaku utilizes masks, Kabuki is famous for its heavy use of elaborate makeup, exaggerated to emphasize character features. Finally, among the traditional forms, Bunraku is perhaps the most unique. It features 3 puppeteers working in unison to control a puppet, which is made to look as fluid and natural as possible. The relationship between Bunraku and Kabuki is strong. Most Bunraku playwrights also write for Kabuki, and most Bunraku plays also have Kabuki versions. So what do No, Kyogen, Kabuki, and Bunraku have in common apart from their status as traditional forms? All 4 of these have influenced modern Japanese and non-Japanese performance and popular culture. Consider, for example, visual kei, a genre that has seen popularity since the 1970s and 1980s, it is comparable to Western punk or glam rock, featuring heavily stylized performances, elaborate makeup and costumes, and androgynous musicians. Sound familiar? Visual kei is undoubtedly influenced by traditional Japanese forms, in particular kabuki, which is also famous for its extravagance and gender nonconformity. In fact, the transgressive origins of kabuki are similar to those of visual kei, which is fundamentally about freedom of expression. Kabuki is believed to have originated in Kyoto, where a group of performers led by okuni became popular. Such nonconformity is also a key feature of the visual kei aesthetic, which prioritizes comfort and freedom of expression over everything else. A subculture of visual kei is Angura kei, which emphasizes traditional Japanese culture and outfits, such as kimonos or geisha-style makeup, and was possibly named after the Angura theater scene which emerged in the 60s. Visual kei has also popularly entered the ever-growing world of anime, which further extends the reach of traditional Japanese theatrical forms. One of the most popular examples is, of course, the band Nightmare, whose song The World was used in the title credits for Death Note. Speaking once again of transgression, another style that emerged in the mid to late 20th century is Bhuto. Believed to have been founded by Tatsumi Hijikata and Kazuo Ono, Bhuto is a truly postmodern art form. It was shaped by reactions to Western influences on Japanese culture post-World War II and rejects the strict formality of traditional forms such as No, Kyogen, and Kabuki. It also de-emphasizes the so-called grand narratives of religion and royalty so characteristic of traditional theatre. It focuses on the individual and specifically the artist themselves. Bhuto is famous, perhaps infamous, for its use of white paint, slow, controlled movements, lack of coherent choreography, and grotesque imagery. Fundamentally, Bhuto is about exploring the human body intricately. Some artists interpret it as an entry into the dark side of human nature, or as a raw depiction of the human condition. In any case, Bhuto places the physical body and its abstract manifestations front and center, forcing artists to question and re-evaluate their sense of comfort and understanding of taboo subjects such as nudity, madness, grief, and so on. The artists do not always play characters independent of themselves, using instead their own lives and experiences to fuel their choreography. Although it is debatable considering Bhuto's near-total rejection of traditional form, I believe that it does still contain traces of traditional Japanese culture and theatrical practice. Often, the expressions of Bhuto performers mirror the expressions carved into Oni or Tengu masks used in No. Furthermore, some Japanese Bhuto groups, such as the Wild Tigers, believe in bringing back traditional audience participation during their performances. In the early days of traditional Japanese theatre, the audience was not as removed from the performance as they are today. The so-called fourth wall was not as rigid. If they liked the performance of, say, Kabuki or Kyogen, they would actively show their appreciation during the show, and the performers themselves would also continually interact with the audience. This also worked in the opposite direction, where if someone was not enjoying a performance, they would simply fall asleep and then wake up for the good bits. Doing so was not considered rude or offensive to the artists. It could be argued that the one-way relationship between the audience and performer is the result of gradual Western influence on traditional theatre. The Wild Tigers seek to bring back the symbiotic relationship between artists and audiences.
We want to recreate a kind of traditional Japanese theater. We consider the whole theater, not just what's on stage, but the physical theater, including the audience. In the old days, when people went to see kabuki or sumo, they would eat, drink, and laugh out loud during the performances. If they were bored, they'd go to sleep and wake up for the good parts. It was a freer atmosphere that allowed for a lot more audience participation, entirely different from the formal European style. By actively taking part in our Bhuto, you unleash your emotions. This frees you to respond in your own way.
Although what I'm about to say could be contentious, Bhuto has extended its reach even to mainstream Hollywood. Take, for example, Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. One scene has the protagonist, Rick Deckard, searching for two replicants, Roy Batty and Pris, in an old, deserted apartment. Pris's makeup in this scene fits the narrative because she is attempting to blend in with the mannequins and dolls that populate the apartment, but her appearance is strikingly similar to a Bhuto performer. Obviously, she is covered in white paint. Ideologically, however, the connection goes further. Throughout Blade Runner, there are important ideas raised about human nature and the human condition, and also about the role of the body in personhood. According to Blade Runner lore, replicants have a 4-year lifespan, which they often desperately try to overcome. Moreover, the tug of war between Deckard and the replicants, particularly Roy Batty, may be seen as a battle between what Bhuto practitioners might consider the dark and light sides of being human. What's even more interesting is the sequence of events leading up to Pris's death. Pris uses her body to try and kill Deckard, displaying strength and flexibility. Even upon being shot, she writhes and contorts uncontrollably, making for a very discomforting scene. The entire act seems nothing short of an ode to Bhuto, right from Pris's outward appearance to her grotesque manner of dying. The link between Blade Runner and Japan is further exemplified by the entire cyberpunk aesthetic of the film. The neon lights and futuristic technology are reminiscent of Tokyo. Not to mention, Blade Runner was released in the same year as the first volume of Akira, another landmark cyberpunk story. It is possible that I conflate correlation with causation and find inspiration where there is none. However, the similarities between the explorations of the body in Blade Runner and in Bhuto are strikingly similar. A connection does exist, even if it isn't explicit. In this video, we have explored ideas on Japanese theatre's origin, looked briefly at some of its traditional forms, applied principles from those forms to study contemporary developments in Japanese visual culture and dance, and finally placed Japanese theatre and culture within a more global context. Evidently, Japan has had a rich history of theatre and performance arts, and some of its traditional forms are the oldest surviving forms today. Japan continues to extend its cultural influence far beyond its geographical borders, enriching the world of art for decades to come.